All right, so breaking down the top five from this weekend, we have Shazam as a repeat number one with a 25.14 million gross for the weekend. And after that, we have Universal's Little, which actually did surprisingly well, with about 15.5 million. And then from there, we have the gritty R-rated reboot of Hellboy with 12 million. It's not doing well, and there's a lot to talk about there. And after that, we have Pet Sematary in its second week performing with a pretty standard horror drop of 10 million. And then we have Dumbo, the Tim Burton Dumbo, still hanging on with $9.118 million. So, Brennan, do you have any overarching thoughts from this week?
You know what? I think it's nice to see Shazam take a second consecutive week in first. I guess also they stunned a couple theater chains because they got bumped up in theater count this weekend as opposed to last weekend. So I think that's a good sign for them. They're making a lot of money. And then I think the big topic of discussion at the box office this weekend has got to be Hellboy. It truly bombed. I didn't think it would be this bad. This is a really, really, really awful first weekend for that film. And I guess we'll see where it goes, or I guess where it doesn't go.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not good. We'll get to that in a second. Let's just start with Shazam because it's number one. So,
yeah.
$100 million budget. It's grossed 25 million. Second week worldwide gross is now sitting at 221 million, which is solid. But my question is, did we expect this movie to have a better hold from week to week? Because from my perspective, I just thought that 50 million opening, which was pretty decent for what the movie of its size, and you would figure it's more of a comedy. You'd figure have like a better comedy drop from week to week. But are you surprised at all with that drop, or is it just me creating something out of nothing?
You know what? 53% drop from last weekend. It's not bad, but you're right. I think I probably would have expected somewhere in the mid 40s if I had to take a guess. It's hard when a film opens up to over 50 million to maintain. And have small drop-offs, but I think, this is definitely a little bit worse than I thought they would do. Second weekend, I thought they would definitely hold on a little bit stronger, but it's still a good weekend for them. They're still making money, a lot of money. I can definitely see your point there.
Yeah, it's doing fine. That's we shouldn't bury the lead there. Warner Brothers is going to be content. I mean, it's already made 221 million on a $100 million budget, so it's doing fine. And there's already been talks of the whole group, David F. Sandberg and everybody coming back to make a Shazam 2. So that's not going to be a problem. But from my perspective, I just thought that this movie would probably have better legs than it looks like it's appearing to have. And then we have Endgame on the horizon, which is just a black hole that's just going to suck in every bit of money that's possible in the box office. I just would have expected this movie to just do, I don't know, a little better. Then maybe I'm being greedy, who knows? But we've seen this is maybe coming off of Captain Marvel, which is just still doing absurdly well. But I don't know. Shazam it's doing okay, but I just feel like it could have been more. I don't know.
Yeah. I think next weekend's probably the last opportunity for them to collect all their chips, so to speak, before Endgame comes in. So I think it'll be crucial for them next weekend to try to stay around 50%. That would be crucial next weekend. Get the money domestically, get some more foreign dollars in there, get your worldwide box office up a little bit because Endgame is going to put absolutely everything to a halt.
Yeah, it's really just going to destroy everything in its path, and it's going to make $300 million or whatever in its opening weekend. And I'm just maybe
it's going to be insane.
It's going to be ridiculous. And I wonder, there could be two ways of looking at this, where Shazam gets actually a bit of a bump in future weeks because there's so many sellouts of Endgame. So like, all right, let's just go see this other superhero movie. Or it could be the complete opposite, where no one sees it. So it's definitely to be determined with this movie. But other than that, like it's doing fine. Warner Brothers can't really complain. Obviously, they like for it to be doing a little better, be more of a breakout hit. But I mean, it's doing fine, so you can't really complain with that. So I don't really have much else to say about this movie, honestly.
No, yeah, I agree.
It's just there. So we move on to our second place film here with Little from Universal, which I'd seen the trailer for a bunch of times. It looked like it got lot of laughs from audiences, and it made actually a pretty decent chunk of change, 15.5 million against a $20 million budget. What did you think about this one? Were you curious about this movie at all, or was it just kind of not on your radar?
Yeah, for sure. I think that this is a film that they marketed pretty heavily. I remember seeing this in the theaters probably 4 times in the last couple months, like just before other movies in the previews. So I expected it to do okay. I think it's kind of following in the footsteps of some more recent films, say What Men Want,
Hmm.
which kind of opened to a respective number with as well a $20 million budget. It's tough though because these are films that don't always do well in foreign markets. So
Yeah.
while we're praising its $15.5 million opening weekend, I don't think it'll make back that much overseas. So factor in marketing, which I'm not 100% sure what it is, but with the $20 million budget, I don't know how much of a moneymaker this will be. But just for what it is, 15.5 opening weekend, that's pretty strong for this film. And it took out Hellboy. I didn't think it was going to do better than Hellboy did, but that just goes to speak how unnecessary another Hellboy film was.
Yeah, there's a lot to say there. Little kind of feels like a vestige of like the '80s like body switch comedy that were just like all the rage back a few decades ago. It's it's just one of those movies we don't see a lot of anymore, which is just kind of interesting to kind of see it back. It's very much a 2019 movie if you just see like the trailers and everything involved. And it looks like it's of today, but it just feels like it has so many roots in movies that have come before. And um, I don't know. This movie is really just going to be all about legs. It's definitely, I mean, with the type of movie it is, it's not really going up against head to head against any other kind of movie that's coming out in later weeks. It's just kind of exists, and the people that really want to see it will go see it, and there's no really overlap with anything else. So it's really just going to matter on if it has legs, and if it's so we'll probably need to come back next week and really look at that week to week drop. And if it's below 40%, then it will definitely bode well for Universal. But like it's made, including you mentioned, it's not going to do very well in foreign markets. It's made about 2 million overseas, which isn't bad, and it has a slower rollout. It has a few other places it still has to go to, like Spain and France and Russia, and Russia's not even until August where it comes out there. So this will the I doubt Russia's gonna make this movie like a cash cow, but you never know. With something like this, it doesn't take a ridiculous amount to make it a success, and I think this could be a movie that does really well on streaming or just like or rent like a Redbox or something like that because
I
people see
agree.
that. People see that and say like, I don't. This doesn't look tremendous enough for me to go out and go out and see in theaters, but I might give it a shot later on. I don't know what you think there, but that's kind of where I see this movie going. Just kind of just a casual rental or Netflix stream later on.
No, yeah, for sure. I think this is going to do well on streaming services later on. But yeah, you're right. It's got a slower roll. It'll make some money. You're right. It could definitely be a hit. And as you said, it's not really going head to head against anything else. This is kind of its own sectioned off comedy here. I think that it'll probably do well next weekend. Probably not have that big of a drop off. It's a good Friday or Saturday night film to just go check out if you're with some friends, I'd say. So yeah, it could definitely be a decent hit.
Yeah, I think we'll see with this one. I mean, it feels like a really calculated risk by Universal, 20 million. It's nothing crazy going on. It's just a high concept comedy that they figure they'd hope to get their money back. So we'll
Right.
see. But with that, here's the main event of the week. We have the R-rated reboot of Hellboy, which opened under even what were pretty mild expectations of 17 to 20 million dollars. It opened at 12. That's a $50 million budget, so not awful. This isn't a Mortal Engines scenario where it had a ridiculously high budget and just made nothing in its opening weekend. But as you said, this is not good at all for this
No,
movie. It's really troubling.
I don't know what the goal was here. I don't know. I don't know if they were trying to maybe make this a hit and spark another Hellboy franchise. I don't know. If they,
I'm sure
if
they were trying to.
yeah, if they could have, they probably would have. But that's definitely not going to happen at this point. I think that they probably saw the success of Deadpool, R-rated Deadpool, a couple years ago, and said, let's you know what? Let's open the door on a Hellboy reboot, R-rated, and then it's a complete disaster. I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I want to see how it does when it opens up to more foreign markets, when we kind of see that money start to come in. But a $12 million opening weekend, that's quite disastrous. I don't know if this, just based off domestic dollars alone, it's going to be able to get to 50. I'm not 100% sure. Do you think it will be able to get there or no?
Yeah, I don't see that happening at all. And I mean, we do have to wait for foreign numbers to come in. It actually has a release in China, which I found really interesting, because normally the board, the entertainment boards in China, really, they kind of like to skew away from kind of demonic or ghostly themed movies.
Right.
One of the more bigger controversies with that was with Ghostbusters a few years ago, where it just didn't get a Chinese release because of some weird antiquated rule about witchcraft in movies. So you never know, but I just don't see this movie. Yeah, I just don't see this movie doing well at all in the United States. It just got savaged in reviews. Like, I don't know if neither of us have seen the movie yet, and life gets in the way, but it's really, people were destroying this movie. It wasn't just like it was on Rotten Tomatoes. It was like every review was just really angry, and just like they were just really going after it. So I just don't see much hope for it, because I think this was a movie, because it's not a Marvel, it's not a DC about Batman, Iron Man, whatever. It's not any super established. People really like those Del Toro Hellboy movies, but it's not they don't have the same wide appeal in that respect. So I think a lot of people were definitely waiting to see what the reviews were for this movie before they would really make a decision either way. And with it, it's at what, like a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, and I mean, that shouldn't be your end-all be-all for whether or not you go see a movie or not, but for a lot of people it is. And I just don't, I mean, people want to spend their money strongly or smartly, and I just don't see them going to the movies here. But it actually goes, and this is a really interesting story behind this movie. There was a lot of news broke this weekend about just how troubled the production of this movie was, where there was constant fighting between Neil Marshall, the director, and a couple of the producers, and apparently David Harbour walked off set multiple times. Scenes were getting rewritten on the fly in some points, and this movie had like 12 producers. It was just a logistical nightmare, and Neil Marshall sent in his cut of the movie, and apparently producers he didn't have a final cut. Producers just went in and just cut the movie back up. So there's just a lot going on with this movie, and it's just not a great look for Lionsgate. So
no,
not good. Yeah. Not good.
That's a disaster in the making. And if you even compare it to the Del Toro Hellboys, which I would argue are kind of they have cult followings now, I think. Mm-hmm. The Del Toro films, you even compare it to those, and this film opened up like way less than what those films did. You look at the first Hellboy in 2004, it opened up to 23 million. It only got up to 59 million domestically. So this could be a real disaster for sure. And especially, as we said, yet again, Endgame around the corner. We don't know if that's going to help movies, hurt movies, but it's definitely going to take the light away from movies.
Yeah, I like those Del Toro Hellboy movies. I think they're fun. They have all the Del Toro signifiers. They're fantastical. They're a little like grotesque in that fun Del Toro kind of way. And if I'm being honest, an R-rated Hellboy makes sense when you think of the subject matter. He's a literal demon, and there's just evil dark wizards and shit flying everywhere, and it makes sense for this to be an R-rated movie. And in an age when everything is getting R-rated, like, I don't have a problem with something with a studio going out and saying, hey, like, let's just try this different. I mean, I'm sure this definitely in the vein. They saw things like Deadpool, which is gleefully profane. It's like, hey, let's do that. So maybe that idea wasn't the greatest, but in concept, I feel like this movie could have worked in some way. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. I think with probably a better team behind it, they could have executed a lot better and made a film that isn't getting torn apart so much, and a film that's not bombing. I think definitely this thing had potential. Even just thinking a few months ago, I thought this could have been a hit. I don't know. But then as kind of we got closer and closer and closer, things started getting worse and worse for this film. And as you can see here, it's just an opening weekend disaster, box office bomb in terms of domestic numbers. So, yeah, you're right. I definitely saw where there could have been potential for this film, given the subject matter. But this is definitely a disaster.
Yeah, and this leads to just more trouble with Lionsgate in general. They were really successful about 10, 10 years ago, leading up to about 5 years ago, for a five-year stretch in there where they had the Hunger Games and Twilight going on. So they were just cranking out a ton of hits, and they were really profitable. And they've been really searching for that next cash cow ever since, and they've really failed a bunch of times. And just Hellboy is like the latest one where we've heard of just serious producing issues behind the camera with them trying to launch some type of maybe franchise or whatever they're trying to do. And there's rumors last year that Lionsgate was trying to sell off their content to other people, whether it be Warner Brothers or something like that, or even Netflix. And I wonder if this is just only going to accelerate those talks again, because it's just Lionsgate has not been great in this recently, and we're in a time now when even Fox is getting purchased. So I wonder if we see something about that come out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think that this could definitely lead towards that happening. I mean, we'll see, but I think that you're definitely onto something there. That's definitely something that could happen for sure. It doesn't really bode well for Lionsgate at all.
Yeah, I just can't wait for more Twilight movies from whoever purchased that, and then it's whatever. We'll get to something Twilight adjacent in a second, but I think let's move on. Sorry, Hellboy, you tried, you failed, but let's move on to Pet Sematary, which I don't really have much new to say about this movie. It dropped about 60%, which is fairly standard for horror movies. Even though they would like to see more, considering there's the Pet Sematary branding on it, but it's doing all right. And this is a calculated move by Paramount, $21 million budget, and it's already made almost 77 million worldwide, and then it'll get to 100 million soon enough. So this movie is just chugging along, and it's going to make a nice chunk of change for Paramount.
Yeah, you know what? I was disappointed with the film content-wise. What I watched, I didn't love the film, but from a kind of just a fiscal perspective and how it's doing at the box office, this film is a success. It's a moderate success. It is a pretty standard drop, as you said, about 60% for a horror film. But as you said, the budget's low. They're making their money, and I think that this film will get 100 million globally. It will prove to be a hit. I thought it would have been a slightly bigger hit, as you said, considering the branding behind it and Stephen King especially, but it's happening. It's moving along here. $10 million. It's not too bad. I wouldn't be disappointed. Yeah, I wouldn't be disappointed if I was Paramount. I think they're going to make a decent chunk of change off this film, and not too much to say about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were hoping for some crazy. I mean, in a vacuum, you can't always hope for this, but I'm sure they were hoping with it being Pet Sematary that there was going to be a crazy breakout hit and maybe cross 200 million worldwide, maybe like approach Get Out type of numbers or something like that. But like you said, the movie isn't great. It's very much a non-starter for me personally when I watched it. So it's just, and it didn't, and audiences haven't really responded well to it either. So the fact that it's making this much money now is just really just based off of that Pet Sematary name. So could have been worse, and it could have been a lot better. But hey, they're making money, and it's gonna probably quintuple the budget at some point. So I'm sure Paramount's not losing sleep.
They definitely needed an opening weekend spark though from the audiences. They definitely needed good reception out the gate, and I think that would have helped this film. They didn't really get that because the opening weekend they made good money last weekend, but it wasn't like crazy numbers. It wasn't like it was about 25 million last weekend that they opened up to. They needed to make more than that opening weekend. They needed good reception. They didn't get that, so it's just going to be kind of just your standard horror film from here on out.
Yep, I agree. And we have The Curse of La Llorona coming out next week, so that'll probably dip into its amount just a little bit, with that being the next big horror movie from Warner Brothers. But it's chugging along. So with that, I think we'll move on to Dumbo. And I also have nothing really new to say about this movie. It continues to kind of just struggle along. It's made $266 million worldwide against a $170 million budget, so that's not great for Disney, but like we've said many times, it doesn't really matter for them because they have so many high-profile hits or soon-to-be hits coming later this year. The only thing I can say is it's inching closer to 100 million at the domestic box office, and knowing Disney, because they like these big round numbers for all of their shareholders, it'll definitely get there one way or another. But yeah, it's just not doing great. It's just kind of a bummer for, I guess, everyone involved there. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's chugging along. I think that it's probably going to surpass 300 globally. Just kind of probably inch a little bit past there. But yeah, this will get onto Disney Plus. This will do okay. And it is Disney as well. They got the money. At least they've passed their budget by a considerable amount now. Maybe they can start turning a profit on this. I don't know how much they spent with marketing. But overall, it's fun. It's doing okay. Not as well as I think Disney wanted it to, not as well as I thought it would do. But I think that's another example of it needed better opening weekend reception. It also isn't a film that got great reception. It didn't get panned opening weekend. I mean, critics were kind of mixed on it. Audiences were. I saw a lot of kind of mixed reception. But I think if they got good word of mouth opening weekend, maybe it would have done a little bit better. But I think it's something that people are just going to wait till it comes out with a streaming service or on rental. It's not something that people are going to be rushing to see at this point.
Yeah, I think this is just, it kind of speaks to just how saturated the market is. I mean, when people hear that something is meh or whatever, and they don't really hear much great about it, they're just not going to go see it in theaters because there's so much more to look at, and even just stay at home and watch something on Netflix. It's one of those where you need with a movie like this. People know Dumbo. It's a known item in movies, but it's not. We've mentioned this maybe before. It's not The Lion King. It's not Aladdin. So you really need to do well with reviews and get that buzz going. I just didn't get that. It's not the word. That's a fine film. I didn't hate watching it, but it's just kind of it's like Pet Sematary. It's just a non-starter. Doesn't really get anyone excited for it, which is maybe the worst sin you can create in this type of environment. But yeah, so there it's just chugging along. So I think from there, I'll just go to some more interesting question mark choices here. With I want to talk about After, the new Avron Pictures movie. And I literally have nothing to say about this movie except that it's based off of Harry Styles fan fiction. So I'm just going to give everyone a moment to let that sink in. And we're there. All right, moving on. We are moving on to Missing Link. It's the new Laika Studios production, this time distributed by Annapurna Pictures. And like Laika movies before, we have Kubo and Two Strings, Paranorman, Coraline, all these Box Trolls, all these movies. It did not perform well at all. It opened in 3,400 theaters in the U.S. and made less than $6 million with 5.8. So that's really not a good start for this movie, and it has every Laika movie about a $60 million budget. So this is really a bummer for me because this movie looked pretty delightful from the coming attractions. What did you think here, Brennan?
Yeah, I was super excited for this film. I'm probably going to check it out next weekend. Just as we said, life sometimes gets in the way, so kind of busy this weekend. But yeah, next weekend. This is the movie I'm going to see because it looks great, got great reviews, and I would urge other people to give it a shot as well. I just think that stop motion isn't like, I don't want to go into it too much, but it's not something that there's not a huge market. I just have to say it there. It's not a huge market.
You're right.
I mean, you got a guy like Wes Anderson. He's gonna make considerable money. He's not going to make blockbuster stop motion animations, but he's going to make some money back because he has a large following himself. But a film like this, I mean, I expected it to do better. 5.8 is quite low, but I didn't expect it to be a huge hit. I expected maybe 10, 15, but 5.8 is pretty rough. We'll see how it does as time goes on. We'll see how it does in foreign markets, but it's definitely a very, very rough start for this studio in this film.
Yeah, it's just, as you were saying before, just stop motion animation is just really not performing well at the box office. There's like one or two stop motion movies that come out in the theaters, in mainstream theaters every year, and all of them have underperformed considerably. You have Early Man from last year, which was from Aardman, the UK distributor or creator of stop motion films. They do Shaun of the Sheep, and as well, and all those movies, and Wallace and Gromit, and it's just in all like these Leica movies, they're all very well received. Missing Link is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, just like Kubo and the Two Strings and everything before it, and yet it still doesn't do well. And it's kind of a bummer for Leica, they've been bouncing around from distributor to distributor, with Annapurna picking them up this time. They just don't seem to find a home with audiences, but the audiences who do see their movies say they're quite delightful, and it's kind of a bummer. And we were talking before we got on here just about Leica in general, and how even though this kind of seems dire for them, they're not going to go away. Because for those that don't know, the owner of Leica Studios is Phil Knight, of Nike fame, so he has the money to keep this going. And Travis Knight, who you may know as the director of Bumblebee, has been heavily involved in these movies for them, so they're gonna stick around. But it's just curious that they just never find their audience, and I'm wondering what they could do differently moving forward, because I really don't have an answer there.
No, it's pretty rare that a stop motion film kind of comes around and becomes a huge hit. I mean, if you look kind of in the past, Coraline, that's another film that it made $75 million domestically. Worldwide, it made $124. That's a critical hit, received very well by people who saw it. But that's also not a film that blew up, right? $124 million globally for an animation is not great. But if you go back kind of in history, there haven't been too many stop motions that have found an audience and became a big hit. You go back to 2000 with Chicken Run. I don't know if you remember that film.
I do remember Chicken Run.
Yeah, it made $224 million globally. So that is in 2000. So that is a pretty good sum for a stop motion animation film. Then also you got The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is obviously a film that's going to stand the test of time, and it's still talked about today. But there aren't that many stop motion films that really find their audience and make a lot of money. I mean, Fantastic Mr. Fox, that's another example. That's the Wes Anderson film from 2009. It made $46 million worldwide on a $40 million budget, but that's a film that some people were talking about as it's like one of the greatest animations of all time at the time when it came out. Some critics praised it to that level. So it's just hard. There isn't a huge market out there, so they need to keep these budgets low for these stop motion animation films.
Yeah, and it's tough, and that runs into, there's been numerous, and not just with stop motion and animation, but just numerous examples of animators getting underpaid, and that's just kind of an ugly thing to deal with as well. But yeah, it's just, I wonder if this just goes back to Disney and Pixar just kind of not sanitizing animation, but all of their movies kind of look the same, and they're all so popular that that's kind of what people expect now. So when they see something like that stop motion, it's just kind of odd to them and maybe like a little unapproachable. But yeah. I don't know. That's probably another discussion for another time. But yeah, sorry, Missing Link. You struggled. I'm hoping for the best for you. You look delightful. I want to see Zach Galifianakis do weird things. So that's a bummer. But we'll move on to some notes here. We had a bunch of interesting little indie movies that opened up or expanded. The one movie I got to see this week was High Life, which I highly recommend. Maybe not to everybody, because it is a bizarre film that is shocking and definitely not for everybody. It's a lot of a movie. It's just, you'll know if you see it. But it expanded to 32 theaters around the country, and it made about 200,000, which is a pretty solid number for that. It's doing really well. It's the Robert Pattinson space movie, for those that aren't aware. like I said, great movie. I'm curious how A24 distributes this movie moving forward. I could- predicted on this pod last week that it would just be one of those A24 movies that gets pushed into way too many theaters, and random people will go and see it, and they just have no idea what to do with it because it's so bizarre, and they just reject it. And I just kind of see that as the outcome for this movie. It's kind of sad to think about, but I don't know. I just don't see this movie quite catching on for in terms of uh, box office gross. But other than that, we have a couple other interesting movies. We have two rock or music-based, fictionalized music-based movies with Teen Spirit, that stars Elle Fanning as a rising pop star. And then we have Her Smell, which is starring Elizabeth Moss, and it's kind of in the vein of a Courtney Love 90s grunge anthem movie, which is getting great reviews. I'm really excited to see that one. We have Wild Nights with Emily. I believe it's with Molly Shannon. It's just a very interesting, let's say, revisionist history of Emily Dickinson. Maybe not that. It's kind of strong, but it plays up on her love life, shall we say, and that's getting great reviews. It's very interesting. And the last one is Long Day's Journey into Night. And so all of these movies, other than High Life, we normally see like one big indie movie kind of come out and play in 4 screens or 3 screens or whatever. And we had 4 this week. And then now that doesn't even include Mary Magdalene, which is just a very interesting former Weinstein issue with Rooney Mara and Joaquin Phoenix as Jesus. That also opened. But we're seeing there was a glut of indie movies that came out this week. It's just interesting to note. We'll see what they do. I imagine a lot of them will go straight to streaming soon eventually, so you'll probably see them soon. But just something to look out for. It's a little fun tidbits there.
Yeah, I wanted to also point out, sorry if you don't mind there, I think it was
Absolutely.
the film that you brought up a couple of weeks ago, Diane, by Kent Jones, the critic, if I'm not mistaken. That's a film that kind of boomed this weekend. Jumped up 45% from last weekend. It made $83,000 this weekend. Expanded theaters a little bit, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, and I got a chance to see the movie. It's really, really good. It's nothing groundbreaking or anything like that, but it is a really solid character study that I totally recommend for those that don't want to go see Hellboy or looking for something a little more critically inclined there. So yeah, definitely take a chance at Diane. And my favorite movie ever, The Beach Bum, is still hanging around, not doing too hot, but it's still there. It's still in theaters, around 100 theaters around the country. But yeah, that's about it. And then we'll turn from there to just the polar opposite of indie movies, where we had Star Wars Episode 9 trailer drop early this week, and I can't wait for the Russian bots to go crazy here. But basically, what'd you think of the trailer? What did you think?
Okay, so I watched the trailer, I think 3 times or so. I thought it was, I mean, it doesn't show much at all, besides one little bit at the end, where it doesn't show anything, you just hear something at the end. That's kind of the only thing that's revealed. The rest of the trailer, not really much is shown, but I couldn't help but get excited watching it. I think that's something that people who are a fan of the franchise, they can feel that way, get excited watching it. But then I kind of came back down to earth, and I'm like, this is an okay trailer. It's good. It's not great.
It's J.J. Abrams really filling us with member berries again, as South Park hilariously lampooned after Force Awakens came out. It really does feel like this movie it's not going back to its roots, but it's saying it's more comfortable feeling than something like The Last Jedi, which just really polarized a lot of people. Now, obviously, we have Palpatine laughing in the last section of that trailer, which you alluded to earlier, which we're bringing more stuff back, and we got Billy D. Williams. He's back on all these old things, which are fun to see. But it's really interesting to kind of see. This definitely feels safer than The Last Jedi, and it was pretty infamously explained after The Last Jedi came out that they really didn't have a plan for Episode 9 after that, and they were kind of just writing these movies as they go. So we'll see if JJ kind of goes back on things that Last Jedi made, and maybe Rey actually has parents that amounted to something. I can't wait for all the clickbait articles talking about the title name, and the font color of Star Wars. What does it mean? What does all this mean? But I can't help but be I can't help but I can't help but be a cynical asshole and just think of all of the stuff that surrounds Star Wars movies now, where I immediately watched the trailer and I got a little tired. Just because after Solo and The Last Jedi, it's a lot, but who knows? Maybe we just needed J.J. Abrams to come back in and make things comfortable again for everybody. So I don't know. I'm just kind of bracing myself.
I like the cinematography in the trailer. I like the
very beautiful.
There.
Very beautiful.
Yeah. I like the initial cut there. It's kind of a allusion back to an older film. Do you know what I'm talking about? Kind of the beginning cut. It's so I believe it's North by Northwest.
Interesting.
Watch it again after this, but a lot of people.
I can see that.
Yeah, because you see Rey, she turns around, starts running, the ship's behind her. It's kind of like there's similar angles, and it was pretty cool. I don't know if it was intentional, but I don't know, but it was cool.
Yeah, JJ I have nothing bad to say about JJ. He's an incredibly slick director who's really intelligent. He uses visuals really well. He gets great performances out of his actors. He knows fun. He has that swashbuckling spirit in a lot of his movies. Even the 2009 Star Trek, which is just a delightful movie, in my opinion. But he knows his movies. They may not be the most inventive things in the world or whatever. You can throw all these things on him. He knows how to make movies, and he is a very great craftsman. So I'm sure this movie is going to delight many people, or not. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's just something to take a note of. It makes sense with Disney dropping this in weeks going up to Endgame, because I'm sure this will be playing at every AMC or Regal or whatever theater chain before Endgame. So we shall see. The Rise of Skywalker coming soon to a theater near you.
Yeah, you're right though. Abrams is a guy that you look at his track record. There isn't really any stains. He's a pretty solid director. He does the job, and he does it very well. So I think it's going to be a good film. I'm looking forward to it. Of course, I mean we're pretty far away from December, but yeah, this is the perfect time to drop it. We're going to see it before Endgame, 100%. The theaters, people in the theaters are probably going to go nuts.
All right. And with that about wraps it up for this week. So thank you, Brennan, and thank you to everyone else out there listening. We will see you next week. So we'll see what happens with The Curse of La Llorona, every person's most anticipated movie ever. Thank you, everybody.